Hey, Joel.
Yeah.
Before we get into our first presentation tonight, which is the transportation budget, proposed transportation, but I just want to make a comment about the alternative organizational structure and a little bit about that, because you're going to hear a lot about that this evening.
Okay. Very good. So did you have anything else to add in the superintendent's report, or you just want to do it as part of the budget?
No, just do it part of the presentation. If you just give me a moment before we get that first budget going.
Okay. Will says we're live, so I guess we're good. All right. So I'll call the meeting to order. And the first up is our Pledge of Allegiance. If John could lead us on that, he has his flag right there.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, John. Since this is just a meeting for budgets, we're going to pass down through all the regular agenda items that we don't have any action to take. Public comments, we'll save public comments to the end, as we have been since we've been virtual. So if there's anybody that is online that would like to make a public comment, the number is online where you logged in, I presume. And you can call in at the end of the meeting and with your public comment. So if there's no objection to that, we'll go right down to new business, where we're going to start off with the transportation budget. But Peter has a couple things to mention before we get into that.
Yes, thank you, Joel. I just wanted to mention quickly that we are in our third year of the alternative organizational structure, which are our interlocal agreements. And as you know, the AOS dissolved 3 years ago, and each community is separate identities. However, we still share some services through some interlocal agreements, and we are in the third year of those agreements. The three superintendents of the three communities, Mr. Haley, Mr. Pfeiffer, and myself have been meeting, and also Paula Pula. We've been meeting to have conversations about some of the services that are part of those interlocal agreements, which ones are going well, which ones could work a little bit better. And so throughout those conversations, we're starting to make some recommendations for improvement. I bring this to your attention because this evening we will make reference to personnel that are impacted by some of these potential changes. And so I just wanted to mention that as before we get started.
Okay. All right. So I guess we're good to go with the transportation.
We are. Ashley Puller is going to present the transportation budget for us this evening.
Hi there. Good evening, all of you. This is my first presentation of a budget as your transportation director, and I am pleased with what I have to present. I would like to start by bringing your attention to line 1. This is the line where it was moved from the special education budget to the transportation budget. This allows us a better return on subsidy, and which should be in transportation as we are transporting students. Was not budgeted here last year, but we are paying van drivers from this line. And I want you to look at line 3 and 8. This is due to increase hours for one driver and one change in personnel. And also, can I have you look at line 2021, I kept it at $500 because I would like to offer staff development for training such as DPR, safety issues on the buses, student behavior. And lastly, I want you to see on line 28, it has been reduced by $10,236. This is due to lower gas and diesel prices for next year, as well as gas buses get better mileage. And let's see, line 30. I have not added any new buses for next year. This year, we were able to purchase 6 new buses, 2 from the local budget and 4 from CRF fund. I will also present a spreadsheet of our new fleet at the end of the presentation. Lastly, if you could look on line 44, I have reduced that by $25,000, which I feel confident that with the new fleet we have on the road, we should not have any big repairs and maintenance that come with an older fleet. We will still need regular service of all buses, including the spares as well. And if you look at the last line, this brings me to the bottom line where the transportation budget for the next year is down $10,976.32. And that's all I have. Any questions?
John has his hand up. Go ahead, John.
I'd just like to know how improvement we've had in gas mileage on the buses.
Yes, there is improvement, and we have new buses on the road.
Just slight improvement or a very good improvement?
Slight improvement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
John, one of the pieces with the gas buses as well is that repair cost is much less than on the diesel because everything is so technical, and so that was another reason for going the gas route, which is a very wise decision on Ashley's part.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Ashley? Straightforward. Okay. Not seeing any other. I guess we're ready to.
Ashley, thank you very much for putting money in that budget.
You're welcome, Peter.
Good job.
Thank you, Ashley. So next up, we have the special education budget. I assume we have Jennifer presenting that?
Jennifer is presenting the special education budget tonight. She is ready to do her presentation as well.
Okay, good evening. I will be sharing the special services budget for the school year 2021-2022. Before I begin reviewing some of the 491 lines, I'd like to explain a few things about this budget. It is complicated, as oftentimes things are in the world of special education. We have a variety of needs in the district and an obligation to address each of these individually and with no reference to cost to ensure students are able to make adequate academic progress. You will notice in this budget there are some lines with dramatic increases and some lines with dramatic decreases. Most of these lines will be around staff salaries and benefits. Due to the varying needs of the students and movements of students in and out of the district, staff have moved in budget lines. For example, an EdTech began the year as an elementary school supporting the resource room setting, and based on need was moved to the self-contained setting. This has caused a shift in the budget line amounts. Also, due to COVID-19 and many families' choice to switch students to remote instruction, some of our students with more intensive needs have remained home, and therefore have not needed the high level of adult support they would have a definite need for if they were to attend in-person learning. This has resulted in the district not filling 5 EdTech positions this school year. This will show itself significantly in the benefits lines. As with all vacant positions, the highest level of benefits is budgeted, as it is unknown what the new employees will choose. And I'm just going to share a presentation with you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
As I had mentioned earlier, the district has a variety of needs, and I would like to share a little information about special services in Winslow. Each year in October, all public schools must report how many students with special needs they are serving. This is known as the October Child Count. This chart shows Winslow's child count since 2009. As you can see, the numbers fluctuate between years, but there is a general increased trend, and with this school year having 220. There are several categories for which students can qualify for special services. Winslow has the following numbers in each category. Each of the 3 schools has a variety of classrooms. If anybody has a question, just you can ask me. Each of the 3 classrooms have a variety. Each of the 3 schools has a variety of classrooms offering specialized programming. We have an autism program at the elementary school and day treatments, learning labs, and life skill programs at all levels. These are supported by 14 amazing teachers and 36 amazing education technicians. We look closely at evaluation reports and specialist recommendations to support students through services such as speech and language pathology, occupational therapy, physical therapy, board-certified behavior analyst, American Sign Language interpreter, teacher of the deaf, psychological evaluator, social worker, and clinical director of social work. Overall priorities and themes that you will hear consistently through lines in the budget I will present tonight are data from grades K through 12 through the use of a universal screener to collect data points 3 times a year, to track progress, and to evaluate the effectiveness of programming. Research-based reading and math programs that target students' unique lagging skills, and increased use of technology and software programs to provide continued educational options to meet student needs. Okay, and I will now share with you, if it comes up, there it is, the budget.
Jennifer, I think Jay McIntyre has raised his hand.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, yeah, I see 2 hands.
Thanks. You showed the child count at 220, which is the highest it's been in recent years. But I was wondering if you could address the trend, because my hypothesis is that during COVID that we should be seeing an increase in the emotional disturbed population, with the anxiety and depression being rampant. Do you see a lot of evaluations in the pipeline that might indicate that we're going to go even higher in the next 6 months to a year, or is that not a trend that you're seeing?
That is a definite trend that we are seeing, and we do have a lot of evaluations occurring right now. Also, I can go back to that, my slide that indicated how many students in each category. The total of that is more than the 220 that was our October child count. So our numbers continue to go up. I would have to look to see if it is correlated to emotional disturbance like you're asking or not, but I do see an increase in evaluations for emotional concerns.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could ask, so regarding that, I guess based upon your budget, I mean, is there room in that for increased need into next year? I mean, I assume you might have projected a certain amount of that, but obviously unsure of exactly what it would be.
So we continue to look at our social work services. I think that Jason had presented in his budget a proposal for an addition of a person. We also contract with KBH. So those are continuing to be considered.
Okay, so you're feeling, based upon the information you know, that you think you'll be okay with this budget?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Jay, do you still have your hand up?
Me, John.
John.
Not anymore. Thank you.
All right, John has his hand up.
Mine's a simple question, but it might be for Peter. I don't know, or Jennifer, whoever knows the answer, if possible. It's very fluid as to the number of teachers and ed techs we need in a given year. But are we somewhere near similar sized schools as far as the number of staff? We got 50 total, if I read that right, teachers and ed techs combined. Would we be similarly staffed as schools our size in the area?
I'll let Jennifer answer that, John, and then I'll jump in after.
Yes, I believe that we are. I can certainly do a comparison. I don't have data in front of me, but in my experience in other school systems, the way that we have our classrooms staffed, we do a lot of shared support. So we're not putting students, we're trying to eliminate the need for an ed tech support, individualized. We try to, support as many students as we can. So we're using our resources wisely, and we have a lot of students and a lot of needs.
Sure do. I just was curious how close we were to other schools.
Yeah, that would be interesting to find out.
I think some of it is based on population and need, John, because you have requirements as to how many students can be in a certain on a teacher's caseload, a special ed teacher's caseload, and so those numbers change a little bit depending on the needs of the child.
Yeah, I knew it was fluid. I just wanted to get a feel for it.
What you're going to see, this is probably the most complicated budget that we've worked on to date, and it's very fluid because of the changes and the ed techs that have been shifted to meet the needs of the students as the students move from grade to grade as well.
Thank you.
So we will start with the special education elementary resource room. Lines 2 to 4 are representative of my opening remarks. So, for example, in line 4, there have been 2 ed tech positions that have turned into ed tech 3 positions. One was based on earned credits. So you'll see an increase there. Line 8, one of the ed tech 1 positions is vacant. Therefore, the highest benefit option was projected at $17,000. That would likely change if when the position is filled. Line 10, one of the ed tech 3 positions is vacant. Therefore, the highest benefit option was projected, as well as the filled ed tech 3 position. I go down to line 30. Line 30, this line will be changed to technology software as it more appropriately identifies the items in it. Therefore, the amount would be added to line 34. So I do have to explain that my lines were not able to be updated prior to the printing of this. So there are in the notes sections some comments about they will be added to an additional line, and I included the amount in that line to make sure it was in the total. So line 30 is one of those lines. Line 31 includes 4 classroom requests for instructional and curriculum materials. Line 32, this line will be split with the junior high, allowing the purchase of research-based reading programs to fill current gaps at that level and to allow continued support at the elementary level. Line 34 This line has increased to allow for continued use of reading programs such as Edmark Online and Reading A to Z, and the math and reading programs MobyMax and IXL. This line also included that $300 from the. Now we can talk about the self-contained at the elementary level. I'm on 56. This line will be the first of many increased tuition reimbursement lines you will see in this budget. We have many teachers and ed techs continuing their education. In this line, there were 2 courses requested, and these are budgeted at the main university cost. 7, this line is a request by ed techs to take 3 courses. Line 67, this line is curriculum and instructional supplies for 3 classrooms. Line 68, this line will be removed as the amount is part of line 69. Line 69 is technology hardware, and that would include the purchase of iPads. Line 70, this line includes the purchase of a universal screener and continued use of programs such as MobyMax for reading and math. The next section is social work services at the elementary level, then psychological services, and there are no significant changes in those. So I go down to speech. Line 98, in order for the speech and language pathologists to maintain their state license, they need 10 CEUs every year. And so they have requested a conference attendance to meet that need. Line 100, this amount would be moved to technology software as it more appropriately addresses the use. Line 101, this line addresses travel expenses for the requested conferences. Line 102, this line total should be 800. 800 will be added to the junior high and the high school lines and would be taken out of this line. The line was unable to be added. And that is for testing supplies, and we use them across the district, so it should be spread out. The next section, 103, this line includes instructional supplies, and 105 includes software used during therapy. Okay. The next section is occupational therapy at the elementary level. 111 includes a requested conference for the occupational therapist. 112 is a shared position for an occupational assistant. This has been reduced to reflect the amount of services needed. Line 113, this line will be renamed technology software, and it will be used for a handwriting without tears program. Line 114 will be reduced to $150 when the supply test line are added to the junior high and the high school. Each of those lines will get $125. The next section is physical therapy at the elementary level, then audiology, and there are no significant changes there. Then we have other special programs, ESY, and that's line 129. It includes related services for the extended school year program. So there's a slight increase there for PT services. And now we'll move on to the Winslow Junior High Resource Room. 147 has had an increase in the number of courses requested as multiple teachers are taking courses. Line 148 also has an increase in ed techs taking courses. And line 156, this line will be renamed technology software and include programs to focus on instruction in reading and math. That's 156. The next section is the self-contained at the junior high. And line 182 includes instructional supplies for one classroom, and the amount of $1,500 will come out of this line and be added to the technology software line to include programs for reading and math. The next section is social work services, then psychological services, and those have no significant changes at the junior high. And then we have speech pathology. Line 211 includes supplies needed for speech therapy. We then have occupational therapy, physical therapy, then audiology at that level. And there's no significant changes. We now move on to special services at the high school, beginning at the resource room. And I'm looking at line 244. Reflects requested graduate level courses. Line 254 reflects instructional supplies for 3 classrooms. There it is. And then we move on to self-contained. Line 277 is based on requested graduate level courses. And line 287 includes continued use of reading programs and an assessment. The next section is social work services at the high school, then psychological services, and there are no significant changes. And then we have speech pathology at the high school. Line 310 has had a slight increase based on supplies needed at that level. And occupational therapy has no significant changes. And then physical therapy, line 317. This line, I just wanted to comment that it may look like it is overdrawn. It's that was put in the wrong place, and if you look earlier in the elementary and junior high lines, that's where that amount should be. So I just wanted to clarify that's not overdrawn. And then we have ESY at the high school and student transportation. There's no significant changes. We then move on to tutoring. Line 328 and 329 reflect a switch in amounts due to student progression from the junior high to the high school. So that is the same amount, but just in different category. And then the next section includes budget amounts that should the district need to pay for tuition for outside placements. We then move on to the special ed administration section, and this section has a history involving the combined AOS, as Peter had mentioned, that I'm less familiar with. So Peter is going to help guide me through, or us through this section, and I can highlight the lines that he'd like to address. And after he addresses this section, I would like to take just a few moments to discuss a proposal for next school year.
So I guess the main pieces that you'll see when you look at the salary for the wages for the director, and you're looking at lines 338. You'll see that there's obviously a change there, because what's happened with that is when we looked at the AOS services, we had 2 directors in the past, and so one director went to Waterville, one director went to Winslow and covered Vassarboro as well. And then during the course of this year, the director that was covering Winslow took another position and left us during the course of the year. And so you'll see some adjustments in those lines that reflect that, where Jennifer, who was here working as a site coordinator and working as our state agency client, professional, took over the duties of the director in Winslow and Vassarboro, hired one of our site coordinators at the same time, And so that trickled an entire event where these lines indicate that progression of moves. So essentially, for the remainder of this year, Jennifer, who has assumed the position of director, is also doing her RTI, or I should say her
IEP coordinator.
IEP coordinator position, and continued with the state agency client position as well for the 3 districts. We've hired somebody to help with some of the IEP coordinator meetings that Jennifer was doing for the remainder of this year. And next year, we will hire a person to replace Jennifer's IEP coordinator component and to take over the other IEP coordinator components that the person who left us and went to Vassarboro was doing. So we will need 1 individual as opposed to the 3 that were part of Winslow, but were being shared with the other 2 communities. So I know that gets very confusing, but the end result is we will now have 1 special ed director for Winslow and 1 IEP coordinator for Winslow. The other communities will have their own individuals doing those, providing those services as well. Any questions on that? I know it's as clear as mud because it's very confusing the way it all worked out.
And I don't have questions about your component, but I do have questions about the stuff that Jennifer went over before getting to yours. Is this the time to do that?
Sure.
I apologize. I have several, but as you said, this is a very complicated budget, and I've never seen a special ed budget gone through quite this quickly. So I've got several questions. The first is back on lines, multiple lines, including 70 and 182. Could you just fill me in on what a universal screener is? I'm not familiar with that.
Sure. We had talked a little bit about it during the elementary school presentation, and that is going to be an assessment tool that provides us its computer-based reading and math assessment to tell us where our students are achieving. So if we can give that in September, then we'll have a baseline, and then we'll be able to hopefully give it up in the winter and see if we're making progress. And then again at the summer. It's really important for special education as well, because we did talk about having an ESY program, which is extended school year. And in order to qualify for that, students have a regression component, which means that they are showing that they, after a break, take a little bit longer to recoup their skills. So having something like this will really help to see how long students are taking to learn things, and also just if our program is working.
So this is divided between the general education budget and the special education budget. I do not believe that it's going to go all the way up to grade 12. So that's why I included it in my budget. Right, but is this used just for students with disabilities, or is this part of the general education budget? Because if it's for all students, then I'm not clear why it would be in the special education budget.
Right. It is not used for all budgets or all students. It would be for special ed students. I know that the elementary school is also looking at a universal screener, but the junior high and the high school are not, that I know of.
So this is not screening for deficiencies that might indicate a special education need. This is for students, once they've been identified as having a disability, then the screener would be used to diagnose it as a diagnostic tool within the special education population.
Correct, to see their progress.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
As the new director, do you have anything in your budget that it's really hard for districts to stay up to the most recent editions of a lot of assessments, and they're very expensive. I was wondering if in this budget there are any special education assessments that we're updating.
So you'll see in all of the supplies testing lines that there are assessments listed, and then we have some new requests for assessments. We have some money in this year. We're ordering an additional assessment, the BASC 3, but primarily in this budget, it's going to be assessments that we currently are using and need to keep up with the protocols.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about this. How many out of district placements do we currently have? That's an easy one for you.
Yes, 0.
0. Okay. It looked to me like on your lines for psychological services, are we using those exclusively for evaluations at this point?
Yes.
Okay. I noticed there was no increase in that, and my personal experience with the students that I work with, again, going back, I think it's pretty clear from what I read that we can anticipate more necessary evaluations in the coming months. So just want to make sure you're comfortable with the numbers that you've got.
Yeah.
Particularly with students that we're not having as much contact with right now, we may find some deficits that may or may not illustrate underlying disabilities.
And I do, so in developing this, our evaluator has requested some additional assessments that I didn't necessarily want to put into this budget. I don't want to increase the special ed budget. I want to kind of keep it as close to status as I can, because there are implications for increasing special education budgets. And we have other sources like the local entitlement grant that can be used for anything that's requested, any additional materials and things. I can actually include that in that grant. And that I think is a good place to put some of these things that might be a result of an increase in a need right now.
Okay, 2 more questions, and then I promise I'm going to let you go.
You're fine.
Do you anticipate that we may need to provide some compensatory services to students who, because of the pandemic, have not been able to access the services that were listed on their IEPs?
I do not believe that we're going to need compensatory services. We have addressed that from the beginning of the school year by amending IEPs and including an individual remote learning plan, which was recommended by the state at that time. And I've been to many trainings with our lawyers and things that they offer to local districts. And they advise the same thing, that, we need to address this by offering an individual remote learning plan. But we are obviously concerned about students receiving services, and so we'll do our best to move forward with that. But as far as compensatory services, no, I do not.
Okay, that probably answers my last question, which was going to be whether or not you thought any additional summer programming was going to be necessary. But if there's no compensatory services, then I would guess you probably don't need anything additional in summer programming.
So what's in this budget is an extended school year. And so that is part of the student's IEP. So traditionally, students who historically have had that would continue with that service. Students that, because of the pandemic, have had this circumstance put upon all of us, we would look at that a little bit differently. And the administrative team is thinking about summer, and I'm thinking about summer, what I can provide. I don't believe that it belongs in this budget. I think it might be something that we talk about maybe with COVID money or something. And again, I think having all of this software in the budget, and the district has a lot in place right now, could actually help over the summer as well to kind of continue student services. So we are thinking about the summer program, but I'm not thinking about it in terms of extended school year. It would be something different.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. I believe John had his hand up.
Again, this is a question regarding the general, actually kind of more specific towards COVID money. Is there funds or part of the COVID funds available for helping with psychological effects of COVID in general for the general? This is probably not for just special services, but for general budget.
Yeah, and when you ask that, John, you know, when you heard Jennifer mention something regarding the junior high looking to hire somebody next year to help with some of those emotional needs, that would be something that we could look at COVID funds to help us with.
But it isn't just for special ed, right?
No,
It's for the
no.
whole.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ray Karen is trying to get into the meeting. Can somebody let him in, please?
Who is trying to?
Ray Karen. The messages have popped up a couple times on my screen that he wants to get let in.
Will, is that something you can assist with?
Is Will still on the call?
I've just texted him to ask if he could let Ray in if he's not right there.
This is Kyle. I sent him a text as soon as I saw that message a few moments ago too, and I haven't heard a response from him.
Ray Karen is trying to enter the meeting, Will, and I think you need to let him in.
Rocky Gravel's trying to get in as well.
How are we doing? Do we have those? Do we have Ray and Rocky on board now? Can you see?
Their names aren't on the list yet.
Hey, Peter, this is Ray Karen.
Hi, Ray.
I'm on phone, but I can't get in. It says I'm asking to join, but no one's letting me in. It's no big deal. But
If you try again, Ray, you will. Will Backman is here who can do that for you.
okay, I'll back out, back in.
Okay, great.
Kyle, again, I sent a similar message back to Rocky saying try again. We were trying to let him in. Does somebody have the ability to send an invite right from here? I don't know if that would be, I'm sure Will has thought of that out already, but they're probably a little bit more difficult because they're coming from outside AOS 92 emails.
I think for security reasons, Will is the only person who can do that for us, the way this is set up.
Yeah, but I'm just not seeing anything popping up. Now I guess I'd have to figure out what email account they're trying to come in at.
Will, the emails I'm seeing from Rocky are rgravel at winslow-me.gov.
Will, did you?
Yeah, those are the ones that are on the invite. I'm showing that they accepted, but I'm not showing anything where it's asking them to join.
I was wondering if they had the right link, I was wondering if we sent it right from this meeting.
Ray, I just found a way to get into this thing, and I think I just sent you an invite. Rocky, I'm doing the same thing for you right now.
Rocky says he's listening on the phone. He says that's fine. I don't want to hold up the meeting.
Tell him he
Yeah.
just got another email sent to him to see if that worked. Will, could it be the screen that's being presented? If we remove that, maybe we'll see the invites.
Maybe I have.
Jennifer, if you can just remove your screen for a second, thank you. If you still are in contact with Rocky and Ray, Kyle, can you ask them to check their email?
Yeah, I checked my email. I did get a an email from you, Peter, and I tried that, join the meeting, and I still didn't get them.
It's still not working.
Well, it says join meeting, and then I go through the other two steps. My name.
I can't. You're breaking up. I can't understand.
Yeah, it's just I get to join the meeting, but no one's letting me in, so it's no big deal. I'm listening by phone. Just continue with the meeting, please.
Okay. Apologize for that. Not sure what's going on.
They might find they can hear it better on the Black Raider network versus their phone if they're just listening. Just a suggestion. Yeah. All right. So I guess any more questions for Jennifer at this point? Or did you had covered the administrative part, Peter, but we never really got quite to the bottom, so.
Well, I think the main gist of that is that we have 3 site coordinators that that were Winslow employees being shared by other communities. Next year, we will have one site coordinator, and it will be a Winslow site coordinator only. And the same with the special ed director. We will have one director that is for Winslow only. And Jennifer will also continue to handle the state agency clients for Winslow only. So, Jennifer, want to talk
Looks like Earl has a question before we move on.
Yep, I do have a question. At this point, it seems like 2 or 3 meetings ago, you mentioned that there'd been a Supreme Court decision that had mandated that services be increased to students and former students going out to, I believe it's age 21. 22. Is there anything in this budget reflecting the potential for those increased services for our students and our former students?
Mm-hmm. And at this point, that is an administrative letter from the DOE. It hasn't, our state of Maine has not updated their regulations, at this point. But it is recommended that districts consider that offering services through age 22 at the when the student turns 22, the IEP would end. And these are for students who have significant needs that have not met their functional goals. So looking at the budget, we have considered this, and we have the personnel and also collaboration with outside agencies such as vocational rehabilitation. We're going to design programming that way. So looking at unique needs of the students and developing some community-based programs in collaboration with outside agencies. So it was considered in the budget.
Okay, so it was considered in the budget, but is it going to directly impact is it going to add to the bottom line for us within the next year, 2 years, 3 years? And how many students are we looking at?
Yep. So it's considered for 6 students this year, but we already have transition plans for many of those students. And so some of them will be moving on and some of them will remain. I think this next year, you won't see anything drastic in this budget because in addition of keeping a few students at that for next year, it will not be a significant cost to us. Moving forward, the following year, the administrative team is going to have to do some considerations of how we are going to program for students as we get another group added to that list. So yes, those will be things that we will want to talk about as we move forward. But we are confident we're okay with this budget for next year.
Okay. And I'm presuming this was an unfunded mandate, of course.
Yes, the DOE is giving us some guidance that they're working on different, collaboration things that they'll be able to offer districts. Nothing has been formalized at this point, so we will see.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess to go to that point, if I could, so there has been no discussion at the state level for additional funding for any of those services?
Correct. Beyond just the normal student rate that we would receive. Nothing additional.
Joel, that's partially because it's not mandatory at this particular point in time. The informational letter was a recommendation, but not mandatory. And I think it's because they have not looked at a means in which they could provide additional funding to help support. Because this has larger implications of just personnel. It could have implications of space as well.
Right. So the state has it on the radar that they might have some liability associated with this?
I believe they do, yes.
Okay. Well, just have to see how it unfolds. So, well, thank you. Pardon everybody I turned my camera off because it helped my audio feed. So nobody wants to look at me anyway. So any other questions for Jennifer, or should she keep going for Peter to get to the bottom?
Yeah, Jennifer does have something to talk to you about in terms of new proposal, which gets back to a couple of you mentioned if there is any additional cost to this budget potentially, and she'd like to talk to you about that.
So what I'm sharing with you right now is the description of need. Right now in the district, we have 2 speech and language pathologists. One covers the elementary school and one covers some of the elementary school, some of the junior high and the high school. Their current caseloads, one has a caseload of 50 with 5 that are in referral, so those are potentials. The other one has a caseload of 51, plus we also have students that have speech and language on their accommodations list, meaning that the speech and language pathologist will check in with the student or the teacher. It's not a direct service, but they still have to know what's happening with those students. The main regulations are that SLP should have a maximum of 50. So we're right there at the maximum. I did put a little bit of information that I gathered from the last couple of years. The caseloads have been this high for a little bit. So, and as we talked about, the child count is only going up at this point. It's trending up. I did put on there also surrounding districts, Waterville and Vassaboro, and what theirs look like. So in Waterville, they have 2 speech and language pathologists and 1 assistant for a total caseload of 79. So they have 3 for 79. And then Vassaboro has 2 speech therapists for a total of 60. So their caseloads are more manageable in smaller numbers. So my proposal is to add a speech and language pathologist for 3 days a week. This would cover the junior high and the high school. It would allow our current speech and language pathologists to focus on the elementary school and specialty, which are our significant needs students. I do know of this is a contracted rate that I've included on here. I did have asked for some information on what it would look like if we proposed a staff member. So we will have that information and determine which one is most cost effective. The concerns are with adding it as a staff member is we also add benefits and things like that. So I will get that information to make sure that this would be the most cost effective way. But adding 21 hours per week, we would be looking at $42,000. Jay?
Have you had any informal conversations with your peers in Vassaboro and Waterville and other places to see whether or not they might be reducing, or whether or not perhaps someplace like Fairfield maybe has somebody that's not full-time now that might be available part-time? It may be easy to find a 3-day-a-week person, but it may be that there's a 2-day-a-week person out there already who's only working 3 days a week for somebody else, and we should be looking to see if we can fit in with somebody that we already know exists.
Mm-hmm. Great, that's a good idea. Thank you. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Jennifer.
So, all right. So, as you can see, there was just a slight increase in the special services budget, so that wasn't significant at this point. So, let's see. What do we get next? We have the board and central office budget.
Joel, I do have one question.
Oh, all right. Go ahead, Earl.
that slight increase, that 22K increase, that is not include the 42,000 from the proposal that we just saw.
That is correct.
Okay, so that has the potential to become a 64K increase.
It does.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for clarifying that, Earl. With that question, all right, so board and central office, I assume Peter is presenting that.
I am, and please stop me. I'm going to be looking at my notes, so just interrupt me if you have a question, and I'm just going to highlight certain lines with this. The first that I just want to highlight, even though it's not a large number, I just think it's deserving of an explanation. When you see student health services, lines 1, 2, and 3, we have a line for each of our buildings, elementary, junior high, and high school. And this is, we put aside some additional dollars for Kennebec Behavioral Health Services. We contract with them for our students. And this is some of those needs that several of you were referring to earlier in terms of some emotional needs of our kids and how do we help them. These are services that go beyond what guidance can provide. I should also tell you that our contract is paid for through title dollars, not the local budget. And so when our title dollars run out, we usually do pretty well with it. We budget $5,000 for each building, so about $15,000. So when those, if we need additional hours, we've contracted a little bit of extra money there to help with that. Amanda, we cannot see your screen, so if you're trying to display it, it's not there. I think we're having technology issues this evening. The next line that I want to bring to your attention, and I guess I just want to talk about it because I think it would be easier to do that, and then we can look at the lines. I mentioned earlier in the evening that some of the interlocal agreements are being looked at. As you know, the special ed area was one of the first ones that we looked at. This year, you know that Mary Boyle is retiring as our curriculum coordinator. And Mary, of course, and Michelle, who is the instructional specialist, have been working to serve the 3 communities in that area. And so one of the things, although Mary has done an outstanding job, this is one of those areas where there's just too much to ask one person to oversee for 3 districts because there's so much involved with it. It's not just curriculum, but it's also the titles. And then you had Michelle, who was assisting Mary with that, but also doing the instructional specialist component. And so as the superintendents met to discuss things that were difficult for individuals to be at all places for everyone, this was one of them that everyone felt we would be better served, and it would be a more doable job for the individual in it if each community looked at having their own curriculum / title person so that they could focus solely on their particular community. That is not to say that the job that Mary has done, along with Michelle, has not been outstanding. Mary has years of experience and was able to do so because of her experience. So this budget is a reflection of that. I have transferred Michelle into that position, into what was Mary's position for Winslow only. So she will be the curriculum coordinator / title person for Winslow only. Waterville will take care of those positions, and so won't Vassalboro. So you'll see a significant drop in those lines in terms of the wages of director for this year compared to what we're budgeting for next year. And then we will not replace the position that Michelle was in. That would just become part of her job as the curriculum coordinator as well. The instructional specialist piece all kind of blends together with that. So that,
Earl has his hand up. Is that, you had a question, Earl? Nope, that was a prior hand. All right, go ahead, Peter.
any questions on that? I've kind of lost my screen with you folks. I can't see all of you. Are we good with that? The next line that I want to bring to your attention, which isn't a big amount, but I think it's important just to point out, is line 21. That is a stipend for the Board of Education. There's a small increase there. We had budgeted $40 per session for board members. We are currently paying $45, which is what the town council is paying their council members for meetings. We were supposed to be in line with what they were paying, and we were at 40. So we moved that to 45 for this year. Starting after July 1st, we will again move to 50, which is what the town council will be doing as well for their members.
Peter, does that include the person that we don't have?
Yeah.
Empty position.
Yes, it does, Joe. Yes, it does, John.
Thanks.
You're welcome. The next line I guess I want to bring to your attention is just line 25, legal fees. I know that, you know, we have budgeted 10,000. We've spent 12,000 this year already. I know that seems like a lot, but I will tell you that I just received another letter from Drummond Woodsum in terms of their hourly rate, and you're almost at $400 an hour. So it doesn't take a long time to eat up some money. This year we spent money on legal fees because we had quite a few questions regarding the solar contract that we looked at. And of course, that is something that's going to begin for us, you know, in the near future, and hopefully save us some money. The other thing, of course, is just questions that happen on a regular basis that we need to have some legal advice on in order for us to make the best decisions possible. So we've left that at 10,000, even though we've overspent that line a little bit. The other line I want to bring to your attention is line 30, but mostly I want to bring to attention under the notes where it says Kennebec Alliance Education Service Center, 1,760. We pay that to be a part of the Kennebec Alliance Educational Service Center, and essentially that is the regional superintendents, the regional school districts have a service center which the board agreed to, if you recall, a year ago, or maybe it's been 2 years now. Maybe we're in our second year. And essentially, the superintendents meet, and we try to provide some in-service activities for our staffs, whether it be educational staff or custodial staff, bus drivers, whatever the need might be. And if we provide 2 sessions per year, it constitutes that we are part of that service center. And as a result of being in that service center and trying to do those cost-saving measures as regional school communities, we receive additional revenue on our 279, which I'll show you in a few moments what that is. Essentially, we receive $60,000 worth of revenue for a $1,760 commitment. So because we wrote that plan and are a part of that, it's a very good source for us. I want to drop down to line 45, wages secretarial, and you'll see that there's a change in that line. And what has happened in this office is that, and I'm going to talk about 2 different scenarios because it ties in. We had one individual in this office who was this is another one of those interlocal agreement positions. We had an individual in this office who was a Vassarboro employee working on Vassarboro special education administrative assistant work. And the other half of her job, or the other portion of her job, was to work on Winslow special education administrative work. That Vassarboro employee has gone to Vassarboro to to continue her work in Vassaboro and also to provide assistance to the Vassaboro superintendent because he needed somebody to do some of this work for him there. And so we've taken the Winslow portion of her responsibilities and have assigned those to our new secretary that we've hired here in the Winslow office. So she's assumed some of those duties. So what that's done is it's eliminated half of a position from this office, in addition to eliminating the position that Michelle is doing, consolidating that. So over the course of a year and a half, we've eliminated pretty much a position and a half from central office. And you'll see that reflected in a few moments. Line 57, support contract, you'll see a reduction from, we budgeted 8,300. You see a reduction in that one. The reason for that is Infinite Campus will now be supported by the state if we apply for the program. So you have to fill out an application and let them know that you are interested in participating in the program. We do use Infinite Campus, so I've just completed that application earlier in the week. And so that there's a reduction there as a result of that. Line 64. That's the business services. This is an area of the interlocal agreements that is working well for all of us. And those are the business services that we receive from Waterville in terms of the business office and the accounts payable and the human resources. They still process that information for all three communities. That is working well for us. So the amount that you see there is the cost for that operation to continue.
Peter, is that an agreement that needs to be renewed?
It will be, John. One of the things that we have had those conversations about, since we are on our third year of those agreements, we need to renew those agreements. And we've had conversations about, how long will those agreements last as we move forward.
So let me ask you, the timing of the agreement, is it based on when the budget's passed, or do you do it assuming the budget will pass?
We do it assuming the budget will pass based on the amounts that we've placed in here.
Thank you.
Operation of plant, line 69 is just insurance property. Again, the first line is elementary, junior high, and high school. And someone would probably ask me, well, why do you have the same amount and for all three, even though you have two larger buildings and one smaller? I believe that what the business office has done with that is they simply split up the bill three ways. And we just budget it between three different buildings because that's what we have. So the total amount there is $70,500, which you'll see at the top of the next page. One of the reasons that the central office, board and central office, of course, has large numbers is that's where the principal and the bond payments are. So if I'll take your eye to line 73 and point that out to you. And if you look at the notes, you'll see Winslow High School renovation, $340,000. That's the first bond, which we call the older bond. So that's the principal for that. And if you look underneath that, you'll see the interest for that bond. And that bond is over in 2027, which, when I first looked at that several years ago, it seemed like a long ways away. But now that we're in 2021, 2027 doesn't seem so far away anymore. So that will be taken care of then. And then the next line that you see there, the Winslow renovation is the new bond, of course, that we're in our second year of, $405 worth of principal and the $277, $425 worth of interest. So that number has gone down a little bit from last year, but it's still a high number, which is a big part of this budget. Next is the maintenance and custodial, and I'll just bring Shelley on board for that because she's got a few things to talk about.
Well, good evening, everybody. Fortunately, this is a very small budget for me to present for you tonight. And what that's going to include is our annual facility needs, which would be our water and sewer, which is not a lot of changes in. And we also get to the area of the budget that I really want you to look at would be on page 4 as we're on, but line number 78, which is the repairs and maintenance. And you'll see that that line's gone up over $7,000 this year. And the reason for that is I've met with Paul from the Public Works Director, and off and on through the years, because I've been around for a long time and y'all know that, but throughout the years, we've had a continual problem with a sewer line that plugs up, that goes out to the street and meets in the street. And talking with Public Works, they want to repave Dean Street this year. And what we did is a couple of weeks ago, we run a camera down that sewer line to see, what the issues were. And what's happened in that sewer line is at the connection, there's a rubber there, and it's been torn. And there's roots that are growing in through the little maple trees that we have out there. And there's quite a dip in that line that leads out to that street. So the recommendation from Public Works is that, we dig that line up and relay that line and repair that line. And then that will take all those issues that we've had and take that away. And then that by doing that, in the future, there won't be any issues, and we won't have to have the chance of digging up Dean Street after they've freshly repaved out there. So that's the recommendation that they made to me. And in all rights, I think it's a good recommendation. And so I've submitted that into this budget for this coming school year. So then if you will go to page 5, line 83, again, that reflects a little bit of savings with that fuel oil and the price that Peter was able to negotiate with Springbrook. And again, we're at that $1.95 a gallon, which, that's a very good price going into next year. So that saves us a little bit of money there. And other than that, everything seems to be the same as we've had in the past. Is there any questions with any of that? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. I will say that Shelley just mentioned, the oil price. Just this past week, I've had 2 different oil companies call to see where we were with our bids, with our negotiations, and the best that they could offer us was $2.15. So we have already, because we acted quickly. I think it was probably a wise move. Shelley's part and on our part to make this go as quickly as we could.
Yeah, very wise.
Next is a summary worksheet. I'd like to review with you, and this is the overall cost center for each of the buildings. And as you look at that sheet, you can see that each of the cost centers are listed, and it gives you a comparison over the years and what the difference. And over on the far right, you'll see a difference for this coming year and the percent increase. As you heard this evening, the special ed is that first cost center, and the difference from last year's to this year is a little over 22,000. But as Earl pointed out, if we include the requests for the speech services, that increase would be more than that. Would be closer to a 60,000+ increase. You'll see that the Winslow Elementary is up 7.23%, but you also have to take into consideration that the sixth grade is now there. A lot of that is due to staff. I mean, if you look at their lines and if you look at the increases, the salary line alone in the elementary school was up 238 because of the negotiated contracts, the second year of that. So that takes quite a hit out of that 301, 495. Schools, as you know, are predominantly people. That's where the biggest costs are. So 80% or more of our budget are people. And that shows clearly here as well. And I think this would be a good time to relay to all of you that, we often hear words such as, well, that's your wish list. What's your real budget? This budget is not a wish list. Things that are in this budget are the things that are needed in order for us to provide a quality education here in Winslow. Are there things that we can look at? Yes, there are, and I'll talk about that in just a few moments. The third line that you see there is Winslow Junior High School. You'll see a 1.49% increase there, and with $28,000, and basically you'd be looking at a salary increase because there really is nothing in that budget that's overly significant. Min-Maid Tech Center, they receive their own funding at this point in time. The only time that you would see something on that line is if the funding was beyond what the state had approved for them, and then we would have to work. We would have to look at a funding formula with the sending districts to see what our portion would be. But at this particular time, the Min-Maid Tech Center budget is not requiring us to contribute anything. Health services, that's just the nurses, and basically the increase you're seeing there is the increase in salary, rate and benefits. When you look at the alternative school, the increase there is 8.58% or $3,810. As we mentioned earlier during the alternative school presentations, we have 5 students who attend that program. And the way that that's figured is the total cost of the program divided by the total number of students in the program, and each community that sends students to there pays that portion. Ours is a little over $11,000, and so this year that increased a little bit. And that is still a much better buy than if we try to, as I mentioned before, if we tried to run our own program, because for the amount that we spend, we could not provide all of those services. District certification, that's minimal increase, and what that is the certification for such as Mary Boyle, who works to make sure that teachers hold their proper credentials. District technology, you'll see a number there, an increase of $78,552. 27.41%. If you recall, when Will did his budget presentation, he had Chromebooks or laptops in that budget, and I'll speak to that in just a moment. But that's the big increase there. I just talked about the board and central office and the changes that are occurring there, and so you'll see a decrease in the board and central office of $122,731. Because of the changes that we've made. Transportation, Ashley presented this evening, and she said there's a decrease of $10,976 there, which is showing here. And so you'll see that the difference there. The area resource center, which is the last thing you'll see that's minus 21,000. We were paying our portion, that was another one of those cost shared interlocal agreements that we had when we were in AOS. We were paying our portion for that individual that was cost shared between Waterville and us. And we, looking at the services that the area resource center was providing, a lot of changes needed to be made for us with COVID, and a lot of it became online kinds of services and services that had to do with virtual learning. And so we felt we could probably better apply some of those funds to other resources based on what our needs are now. And so we've eliminated our contribution to that program. So that's where you see the savings there. So the last page that we have for you this evening is kind of a, that magical page where it's the projected revenue worksheet, where you're going to get the money to pay for some of these things. And of course, this is our first blush through this, even though, as I've mentioned to you, when we put this together, this is not a wish list. We were very realistic as we were putting these numbers together. So if you look at the top line with the total request, and I'm going to take you way over to the next to last column, and you'll see that the total request this year is a $17,481,143.35, which is a 3.56% increase of the total request last year. And you'll see what that number is on the far right corner, which is a $600,567.99. So then we work through this budget worksheet to see where the revenues coming from that are going to pay for this, and what does this mean. So the next line where it says state subsidies under revenues, you'll see that on the state subsidy, we received from the state, or we're projected to receive, $7,928,902.57. That is a 4.48% increase over last year. Right underneath that, you'll see the Educational Service Center allocation, which I mentioned to you earlier during this presentation. That's the one where, we paid $1,760 some odd dollars for fees to make that service, that program run. But as a result of us belonging to that, we get a revenue of $60,969. So when you add those two together, it's the total is $7,989,872.18, which is a 4.42% increase over last year's $279, which amounts to $337,941.76 of additional revenue. Now, one of the things that we were very concerned about was, because of our student count, probably every school district in the state has lost students to homeschooling with COVID. We were no different. We had, at the time when we were doing this work, we had 1,101 students here in Winslow, compared to this time last year, which was 1,139. So 38 of our students, we lost in that count. And we were very concerned about that, because when you look at $7,200 at 38 students, it's a significant amount of money. And all school districts were pretty much in the same situation. The state made an adjustment to their ratios of 1:17 to 1:16. And that helped us tremendously here in Winslow. It was a huge help. And some communities lost a lot of money because of that, but that helped us. So that was a positive piece. I'm going to continue working down the next to last column under the 2021 in revenues, and I'll just kind of walk down through some of these pieces. You'll see where athletics, we're still projecting at 18,000. That's really tough. We don't know. We don't know what the gates are going to be. So we look at the three-year history and kind of project based on that. Of course, this year there were no gates with COVID. I mean, that's a piece that we're obviously going to lose in revenue this year. Miscellaneous K-12, we don't bother putting a whole lot there, because it's unpredictable. So it's not a wise thing to put revenue in there if you don't really know. Rental of facilities is another one, where we don't put a whole lot of money in there, because we never know from year to year. I mean, we have 3-year projections, and there've been some years in the past when there was a lot more going on, where we actually had a lot of people paying a lot of money renting our facilities, but that hasn't so much been the case. The next line, you'll see where some of these things that we used to share in the past are no longer occurring. And you can see how many years back they haven't been occurring, but we leave them on this chart until they phase out, just so that we have a history of things. But we no longer have a shared foreign language with Waterville. That's been gone. Shared technology is something that we lost a couple of years ago. We had an individual who retired, and we didn't replace that. And a lot of these things that we haven't replaced are part of the savings that we've looked at when we say cost avoidance of certain things. It plays into a lot of that cost avoidance that we've talked about over time. Shared behavioral specialist is something that we haven't had, as you can see there, in 4 years. Shared occupational therapist is something that we still receive revenue from Vassaboro from. We have a Winslow employee who does some occupational therapy work with Vassaboro students, and so we do get a revenue for that person. The next line is shared co-assistant special ed director. Those of you who have been with us a couple of years ago, you know that it was Amy and Tabby, and they co-shared that assistant director's role, and they work in all 3 communities. And now that's have been broken up, and as we've said, 1 director for each of the communities, so that's no longer there. Shared site coordinators, we talked about that this evening. It's no longer there, so we no longer receive a revenue for those individuals that we were sharing. Shared curriculum director, that was Mary. We will no longer get a revenue for sharing her. Shared instructional specialist, that was Michelle. Again, same story. And the shared finance assistant with Vassaboro, again, we have our own. We have, Amanda is serving Winslow only. Shared courier, that is a Winslow employee that we receive a revenue for, and that individual goes to Waterville and Vassaboro. So we receive a revenue there. The next one is shared maintenance director with Vassaboro. Now, some of you have never seen that line because that line has never been there. This is a proposal for you to consider. We wanted to put the numbers in here for you to see what it would look like. And this is another one of those AOS interlocal agreements that we've had conversations about. And this is maintenance, and I'm talking about Shelley in this particular case. And what's happened here is Shelley has done just an incredible job serving all 3 communities, but it has not come without taking a lot away from Shelley, just like it's taken a lot away from others who have done the same kind of work. And so as we look at jobs that are reasonable to do for all 3 communities versus jobs that may not be because of the nature of the work, this is another one where we felt as though we needed to give Shelley an opportunity to say, this is way too much. You can continue to work just in Waterville, or you can continue to work in Winslow, but it's way too much because of the needs of the particular position. Shelley very much would like to return to Winslow. This is her home. This is her town. She's very proud of it, and she would very much like to return here. And quite frankly, I would love to have her back here. And so I immediately had a conversation with the Vassaboro superintendent to see if we hired Shelley, if he would like to contract with us and receive her services. And he said that he would. And so the number that you see there, if you approve of this move later on in another meeting, would be the revenue that you would receive if Shelley was to be our maintenance director for Winslow and continue to contract with Vassaboro. And that would mean, of course, that Waterville would get their own maintenance director to do their work. So I know I can't say that she is this person because I need to recommend this to you because she is a Waterville employee at this particular point in time, and you would need to, of course, approve that. But I wanted to explain what the thinking was here and what the revenue would be to offset the cost of us bringing Shelley back to Winslow, which is where she'd really like to be, and quite frankly, where I'd love to see her. So that's what that is. State agency is the next line. These are state agency client students that we were able to build for and get to receive some revenue there for them. And you'll see that there's a small increase there, and there's a special formula that goes into all of that work. The next line is state tuition secondary. So these are mostly students that either come from Vassarboro or China. So there's a revenue there of 397,097. There's an increase there. What we're looking at for this coming year is about 41 students total. 17 of them wish to participate in the tech center. We believe we'll have 7 incoming freshmen, potentially 13, but we know not to go that route. We're going to go low with the revenues on that in case not all of the kids decide to come here. I believe the Vassarboro class is about 48th graders. So if we got anywhere near 7 to 11 kids, we would be doing very well, because Erskine Academy is the school that many choose to attend. We've done a presentation to the students in Vassarboro. It went exceptionally well. The presentation went well last year, went well this year. We had 13 students from Vassarboro last year come to us. So that was very positive, and I think they're having a really good experience with us. The tuition for them, of course, if they attend Winslow High School only and do not go to the tech center, is a little over $11,000 for us. If they attend the tech center, then that's run through the cost sharing formula, and it's about 66% of the 11,000 would come to Winslow, and the rest, the 33% goes to the tech center. That's how that works. Next line is tuition special. Again, that's secondary for special ed students, and there's a special formula that they run through that. It's complicated, but we feel as though we could get a little bit more this year than we did last. And we've put in, out of our undesignated, again, $100,000 in that area to help with that. So if you go down to the bottom, where you'll see the total state and school revenues, the number that's there is $8,635,532. So the difference between that and the 17,481,143 is the last number that you see in the next to last column, which is the 8,845,643, or right now a 5.79% increase to the locals taxation, and that number is 484,120.44. Having said that, this is our first round of this work. What we need to do now is go back with the administrative team and look at those areas that we feel quite confident that we could take out of this budget. And what I mean by that is, when we put this budget together, the Milty program technology was a $90,000 component of this budget, which we now feel the state is going to follow through with their commitment. So that's one that we feel quite confident we could remove from this budget. So that's one piece. The other piece that I can think of right off the bat that we feel we could remove, as I'm thinking about the high school, because they've got some money budgeted for some summer work, summer programming for students to the tune of $3,000. I believe we could remove that because we could use some of this COVID funds to support some of that summer programming. So we have 4 or 5 areas right now that we feel rather confident that we could pull some money out of this so that we can adjust these numbers to be even lower when we go and present to the town council for that first meeting with them on March 11th. Again, I will say though that this is not a budget with a huge wish list, but we have, from where we are right now with the first blush, is much, much different from where we were last year. If those of you who were with us, that number was much greater last year. And we're in a much better place to reduce that 5.79 more to a 3%. Hopefully by the time we can pull some of those things out of there, 3% or a little bit more. This is what we'd like to be able to do.
Okay, Peter, John has his hand raised, but before I go there, I just also want to mention, obviously, health insurance is one of the question marks that you have budgeted 10% as per our usual, and hopefully that comes in less.
That's a really good point, Joel. So that's another one that's yes. So the immediate answer is yes. We've budgeted 10%, which is the worst case scenario. We know that each percent for us is anywhere from, depending on the year, $16,000 to maybe $19,000 in savings for each percent saved. You know, we will find out in March what the highest percent is going to be within the next few weeks. So at least in 2 weeks, we'll know what the highest number is. By the end of March, 1st of April, we'll know what the lowest number is going to be. So that will be an adjustment. So you're absolutely right. I mean, there could be some more significant savings there that would help with this budget. John.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to, Peter, if you could speak to the impact that the law change, the ramping up to 40,000 minimum pay for teachers, what that had on this budget and what we see for the future.
Yeah, that's a really good point, John. And thank you for bringing that up. As you know, you were on that negotiating committee along with Joel and Corey, who's no longer with us. But when we negotiated the teacher contracts, we were looking at, of course, negotiating a competitive wage for our teachers so that they're competitive with other teachers in the area. But also, we're always looking at being fiscally responsible to the community. An additional challenge for us when we negotiated 2 years ago was that the law is changing. And so the law is going to require that the beginning salary for teachers starts at $40,000. And so we needed to look at where our teachers were and become creative with how we were going to make the adjustments so that in 2 years we would adjust accordingly. If the base is going to be 40, that of course has implications on the other steps as well. So we needed to be creative in terms of how that was going to look, and I think we did a good job with it, as I said, so that the teachers do have a competitive salary and we still were fiscally responsible to the community. We will have that issue will come up again because next year we negotiate again that those 2 year contract is over. And so we will start that process again next year.
Thank you.
Hey, Peter, this is Ray Karen. Could you just, I don't have the spreadsheet in front of me. Could you please just repeat your local share total amount in your calculation, please?
Yes, right now, Ray, without removing a few of the things that I said we could remove, right now we are at 5.79%, and that is $484,120.44. But we know that we can reduce that amount, Ray.
Okay, so that was 8 million. Sorry, I just I'm in and out with I had my headphones off. One fell out, so I apologize. It was 8,845,643.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for Peter?
I guess just a comment on the next steps, as I kind of alluded to, is the administrative team meets on Wednesday for our regular team meeting. During that meeting, we will set a date that we can meet as an administrative team to look at some of these areas that I mentioned to you that we feel that we could take out of this budget now that we have more information, such as the Milty program, and that we could use some of the CARES money to provide programming for the summer. So we will look at those pieces we feel we can take out of this and without hurting student programming, and then have some refined numbers for when we present to the council on the 11th. And then we have a school board meeting, I believe, on the 22nd, which is a Monday, where we might be able to refine it a little bit more because we might know more about insurance numbers at that particular point in time. So we may be able to take a little bit more out and reduce it even further. And then we have that final workshop with the town council. I believe it's that following Tuesday after we have that board meeting where you folks can look at this again.
Okay. All right, so any other questions for Peter on any of these budgets? I think that pretty much wraps up the budget presentations for tonight.
It does.
And basically we have a meeting with the council, as you already alluded to, on the 11th to go over this budget with them. And in the meantime, you're going to be doing some of the other work that you've already discussed. So,
right.
Earl has raised his hand. Go ahead, Earl.
You're muted, Earl. I'm sorry.
Long day. Regarding the meeting on the 11th with the town, who's pushing the connectivity codes and emails and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I believe it's the town because it's their meeting. They've invited us to present.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And at that meeting, I think it's important to note that any changes we make to this budget will be changes that we've talked about this evening, because any additional changes I would want to bring back to your attention before we said we're comfortable pulling this out. We want to make sure that we have a means to support it, because there's like the Milty program, for instance, is something we need. Those machines at the high school are very in need of being renewed. So it's something that we want to make sure that we can still find a way to support. So we wouldn't take anything out of here without your approval of seeing what it is.
Okay, well, that's what we'd be doing at our next meeting, so. All right. Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll move on from the budget. I will indicate as we're getting down to the end of our agenda that we do have opportunity for public comment right at the tail end of our agenda before we adjourn. So if you've got any comments for anybody listening online, please call in and we will address those. So, all right, next up on the agenda is a vote on appointments. We do have Mary Beth Burgoyne for the Winslow Junior High School head swim coach. Do we have a motion to approve that appointment?
Move to approve. John Kerry.
Second.
Motion from John, second from Earl. Any other discussions? If not, all in favor of voting for the appointment, I would be a yes.
Earl Watts?
Yes.
Jeff Rydell?
Yes.
Jay McIntyre?
Yes.
Nathan Tyler?
Sorry, yes.
Yes, thank you. And I saw John's thumb go up, so that would be a yes as well. Thank you very much.
Okay. Next we have resignations for our boys tennis coach. I assume you've already accepted that resignation.
Yes, we have.
All right, thank you. No other business this evening? So our next regular meeting is March 23rd at 6. Location to be determined, but I'm presuming we'll still be virtual for that meeting, potentially. And then we'll, again, as we discussed, the budget workshop with the council on the 11th.
That is correct.
And we'll look forward to the information from them on joining that meeting. So,
Joel?
Yes, go right ahead.
For the regular meeting in December, I will have input for the advisory committee, for the Adult Ed Advisory Committee.
For March?
For March, correct.
Okay.
And then is that when we're going to talk about the move with Shelley?
I would never tell somebody to. Yeah, I mean, we can certainly talk about that. But Shelley will need to finish her commitments this year, and knowing that this is would start with us with July 1st. So we can certainly talk about that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, did we have any public comment call in, Peter?
The way the wind is blowing, Joel, I'm not sure we have a phone line in the office still connected, so there's nothing happening here.
All right. We'll take that as a sign that we should all go home, for those of us who aren't. All right. That being said, not having other comments, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved by Jeff. Okay, sounded like Jeff. Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, there we go. Now we have Jeff. We have a second.
Did that sound like Jack?
All right. All right. We got Jay and Jeff. All right. All right. All in favor of adjournment? I am a yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
It looks unanimous. Thank you all.
Hey, Joel.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.